Welcome back, guys. We are here with another podcast. It is a privilege and a blessing to be here. We have with us our youth minister, Daniel Dodd. Welcome back. Welcome back. How are you?
I feel cringed out at this point in time. But I'm glad to be here with you.
It is.
On the previous episode, you spoke about unsolicited thoughts. And
wow.
I think that was kind of a riveting set of thoughts that you put out there.
Right. It was. And now we're here to extend this second episode.
Yeah, pretty much.
Titled Unsolicited Thoughts.
Part 2.
Unsolicited Thoughts, Part 2.
Yeah.
Now, we have been speaking about how is it that we are affected by a lot of the things that we think about. A lot of them are personal and we have limited amount of persons to really share. But we have with us Daniel to help us out into even answering some of these questions.
I hope.
Now, in your experience with yourself, because we know that no one knows you better than you.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you realize is a struggle that you have dealt with as a minister?
Wow. That's a very good question there, my dear Shamar.
It is.
Okay, so for me, I could say accountability. As a youth leader, I think there is a level of pressure that one comes under when you are leading people or when there's a certain expectation of you.
Wow.
And so you think about yourself in a different light. You know, how do I act? How do I behave in front of other persons? Am I leading them down the right path?
Right.
And examine yourself as a leader. Sometimes you may have the thoughts of, hey, I'm not good enough. Am I capable of doing what is expected of me in the first place? So I think it's one thing that every leader goes through, but it's also I can't look at it too much on a negative light, because it helps gauge you and it puts you in a humble place and allows you to be vulnerable before God.
Yeah. Totally.
And other people too.
Totally.
So I think that's one of the main things as a young minister.
Now, to me, hearing what you have said is very interesting, because recently we have been speaking about the accountability, you know, and the vulnerability before God. But when our trainees or the person that we are leading, how is it that you fashion yourself before them in that vulnerable state? Is leadership for you a means of being vulnerable to the persons you're leading? And if yes, how does that affect you in any way?
Well, in all honesty, I'm just starting to learn that a bit.
Right.
I'm not the type of person to be fully vulnerable.
Why not?
Because most time familiarity can be a pain in the butt, if I may put it that way.
Yeah.
Because when people get too used to you, the lack of respect suddenly just fades away. Respect fades away. And so at the same time, for me, it's a more matter of being very selective of the persons who I become vulnerable around.
That's a nugget, right? Yeah.
For me, I would normally at this point, I would more look to be vulnerable around the persons who do not know me as much, right? Not gonna say that's a good thing,
right,
but at the same time, it provides for me a safe space, right? Where I can fully just talk what's on my mind, talk about the issues that is bothering me, and without having the fear of that person looking at me any differently than they had before. Right? But of course, this doesn't say that you aren't supposed to confine with
right.
amongst friends, right, who are around. So, as I said, that's a struggle. I am still fine-tuning how to do that, how to let my guard down around persons who are close to me, right? But we fall short of the glory of God.
It's something that we experience, and That's quite interesting. And I could pick some hints out of that and apply it to my own life, because for me it has been very difficult, very difficult to just open and just be, yes, this is who I am, because you know we live in a very stereotypical society, as you have rightfully said.
Yeah.
And not many persons really appreciate you for who you are, but rather for what you have. And I think that is the value of honor that we were speaking about the last time.
That's a them problem.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say, as we would have possibly mentioned before, unless you have really come to be content with who you are as a person, then you can be able to appreciate other people. And I can definitely say I've failed in that many times. It takes the right people to even draw out that part of yourself.
Right.
And I think that it's not most times, I can say only speak for myself, because the question was directed to me. But I can say that sometimes for me it's not a matter of me not being open, but if that person is really interested in that part of my life, it's like God, right?
Yeah.
God won't just necessarily bestow all wisdom upon such man.
No,
you would have to search and say, okay, they will have the willingness to want to know, right? And it will be more of an infringement upon one's will. Right. Hence why he gives parables, for example, to break it down further. So that's the thing too. If that person who is within your circle is at the mercy of understanding you, right? Providing that environment for you to be vulnerable, right? And to get out of your own thoughts as well.
Right. Yeah. That's true. And it's really touching at times to see, like, you know, persons that you thought to be there, it eventually turns out to it being a damaging and impactful experience. How have you dealt with such things? Being that you are now aware that this particular individual may have some level of influence or some level or degree of information that may be confidential
to you, and they just sell it out,
and they have it. So how have you dealt with such impact?
That's a very good question, my bro. I must say I do have a couple friends who have been negative for disappointment.
Do you think it's necessary for growth though?
Yeah, I think it's necessary for growth though. Yeah, like otherwise, from the cliche talk of everything works out for the good of those who seek and love him. But it takes you out of a place of naivety, I put it that way. From you being naive,
right,
and it allows you to be more discerning, more selective of who you have around you. Yeah. I think from my personal experience, it doesn't necessarily put me in a shell away from people, because I think that's the reverse concept that the world has. Right. They have it in a case where I say, okay, if somebody sells me out or somebody does something bad to me, or if I have shared a thought to them which is deep for me, and they have betrayed me, I'm just gonna go up and out and say, yo, everybody is like this, and just have this general
that stigma, right?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, though, you can't control that person's action, but it shouldn't put you in a place where you're so isolated. I've learned from that to be more aware of the red flags, right? From persons who may be of that category.
Would you mind sharing some of those red flags? Just about two of them on expound.
I guess. That's a really on spot thing. That's what it did. Right? But for me, the when a person is too talkative.
Woo! My God. Recently, I was rebuked by my brother Michael for being too open. To new persons. Wow.
Yeah. So
I thought that was for me.
So you're being too talkative, and a person who holds power, a person who has authority, who has influence, who knows who they are, right? You don't find them talking too much.
Right.
God
That's true.
speaks, but He doesn't speak a lot.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
So that's one of the red flags, because at the end of the day, if it is that they're so open with other people who they come across with, who to say that they are, giving out random unsolicited information.
Right.
Like that. So, and of course, just a disclaimer: it's nothing wrong with interacting, because you have extroverts and stuff like that. But being too talkative, more in the sense of idle conversations. Right. Unnecessary conversations. Right. Being talkative for talkative's sake.
And I think there is even a scripture. I think it's Proverbs. If you don't mind finding it for me,
producer.
Miss Tashi, would you mind supporting us and reading that scripture? Proverbs chapter 19, verse 2, I believe.
How does it start?
I think it was saying that anyone that is hasty in doing anything sins.
Okay, you can look that up in the meanwhile.
And sometimes it even correlates, or even the scripture that says, a fool uttereth all his mind, but the wise keep it in till afterwards. And then again, there's another scripture that says, be swift to listen, slow to speak, but slow to wrath. So these are just some of the scriptures that has been brought to my mind when you say that being too talkative, it actually leads to sin.
Yeah.
That's what you have said, and it reveals too much of who you are, what is given to you for confidential purposes, and it can affect you.
Yeah.
And I believe that a lot of the times when we are vulnerable and we are desperate to be heard, we want our voice to be heard. We're feeling lonely. We're feeling locked. We are in an environment that shuts our voice. It's like as soon as we get the opportunity to speak, we just speak out. But when you look behind some other persons that you realize are very talkative, they are hurting.
Yeah.
And they because the environment is conducive to that negativity, and it steals your happiness. So being that they're always shunned and they're always dismissed, and it says that we are it's foolishness or so on, they don't have anyone. But when they see a genuine person come along, or a happy or whole person come along, they want to just release. So it's like sometimes, if you look at it on another hand, it's like a release. And you find sometimes persons that are hurting like that, they are very clingy.
Yeah.
They are very clingy. Because I have experienced
the clingy ones.